Welcome to the Product Experience podcast. Earlier this year, I chatted with Heather Williams at the Mind the Product Roadshow in Amsterdam. Heather is the Director of Product at Elsevier, and we had a really good chat about how product teams can work better with data teams and just in general, how product teams can really embrace data in their day-to-day work. Heather, welcome to the Product Experience podcast in this amazing setting.
It is quite unique.
It is quite unique. Oh, actually, I said I wouldn't refer to anything visual because lots of people will be listening to us. But for anyone who is listening, we are sat in a room full of clocks. So before we get into our topic for today, give me a quick intro to who you are and how you got into product and what you're up to these days.
So I'm Heather. Nice to meet you, Lily. I got into product only a few years ago, maybe 8 or 10. I kind of lose count. I came on a meandering path through user experience. So I started as a design intern and decided this was really good. I'm going to stick with this and pursue it further. And I think I spent about 15 years doing user research. It's probably my strong area, user research and interaction design. And then I can remember this opportunity came up when a product manager was going out on maternity leave for a while. And I thought there was a chance for me to try that out. And I did for 8 months or so. And I said, oh, this is actually much harder than I thought it was going to be. So I went back for a while and skilled up. And then I returned. So I've been doing digital product for perhaps 8 or 10 years and started managing teams about 4 years ago.
Cool. And tell me a little bit about what you're doing today.
Well, today I'm here at the roadshow, the Mind the Product Roadshow in Amsterdam. After we speak, I would look forward to seeing the roadshow kick off. Later this afternoon, we'll be on a panel about the flux of product.
Nice, cool. And you're Director of Product at Elsevier. So tell me a little bit about your managing teams at Elsevier, because one of the things we were going to talk about today was how data and kind of insights fits into product.
Yes.
And how product teams and product people can work with this as a general kind of topic area, but also with people who specialize in data and in insights.
Yeah. At Elsevier, we've been quite focused on being data-driven in our decision-making for a very long time, even before I moved into product role when I was a UXer supporting other product teams, collecting data and using that data to translate that into design has been something that I've been familiar with since the beginning of my career. Now, we've matured in that quite a lot over the last years. Where I work now, I manage, like I said, 4 teams, and we're probably that's probably half of the group that I work in. So we collaborate quite closely with many other groups in this part of the company. And we are collecting data from many different sources, like of our expert members of our team, if you would. So like within our squads, it's not just the engineering team, but it's also the data analysts. And the user experience members, I would say, are bringing in a lot of that qualitative data, as well as data scientists that we work with that also have a unique perspective on how to collect different types of data that they can use for creating different parts of the algorithm, evolving an algorithm or the experience. So we're using all of that data that we're collecting from different members and different sources to put that into what we're doing and bring the product experience to life.
How do you kind of arrange your product team? So I'm assuming you have a kind of a core product team of a product manager, engineering, and design. How do you bring data people into those cross-functional teams? Are they kind of assigned to those teams on a team basis, or is it a project basis?
It can vary. We try to, as much as possible, embed, but we don't often have, like, there's not usually a data analyst or even sometimes a UX designer per squad. So sometimes they will cross-train between a couple of squads. And we will try to do this in a way where it's kind of compatible so that their mindset and their mental model, like with a persona, is shared between perhaps 2 different sort of value streams, and what they're doing for one value stream, they can oftentimes apply it to the nuance with another squad. But you're pretty much right on the spot though about what our squads look like. It's engineering at the core. Generally, there's always a a UX person and or a data analyst who are assigned to that squad, as well as the product manager. With data science, that's not always the case. That's probably a bit more of a shared service that comes in depending on what the project is and the prioritization of that. And then quite unique, well, perhaps not unique, but in our division of the company, we work quite closely with another sister business unit, two in fact, operations and one of our publishing groups. And so from those groups, we'll often have, we'll call an SME, a subject matter expert, that will come in and be a joint member of the squad during, the relevant phase of that work. Their input will vary depending on, what stage of the product life cycle that we're in, and they'll contribute to the outcomes.
And one of the things that I found, even in the small businesses that I've worked in, is that quite often similar or the same data questions come up again and again. So do you have a strategy for making sure that you're not repeating yourself and that you're pulling out the insights that you found historically and kind of making use of those? Or
That's a really good question. And strategy is a big word here. I wouldn't say we have anything so formal as a strategy. And maybe that's something to go back and for us to think about a little bit more. What we tend to do, I'm curious if it's what happens with other people, but what we tend to do with our data is we do try to document a good bit, so that if a member is promoted out of team or if they were to go somewhere else, there's some memory that's left behind of, where is the data, how to retrieve more data, and what decisions were made previously with this data. When we are collecting data, let's say we've just done an experiment of some sort, like an A/B test, or even perhaps a usability test or some user understanding, that generally does get documented in some artifact that is retained. But we also try to showcase that, like in a typical sort of showcase, but also a team discussion where we can interrogate, like, what does this mean? And how did we, what was the question around this, so we can understand the context and figure out how we can apply it in other contexts, or apply it to, the assumptions that we're trying to test or some other aspect of the development.
Nice. And what kind of format does that showcase take? Is that across the whole business, or I guess you're probably doing quite a lot of them, so it would be quite a lot of work to play it back to everybody.
It depends on how big a project it might have been. If it's quite a big foundational project, the stakeholder audience can be quite big.
Yeah.
And we will schedule a grand showcase and invite folks into that initial discussion. But with calendar availability, the practical, way that this turns out is they don't all show up. But what they will usually do, what we do now, which is quite common for us, is to record those sessions. And they do get picked up, they do get watched, and then there's the Slack conversations and the Q&A that will develop. So it does find a way of permeating and making the rounds. And Slack has become and Slack and Teams, quite a common way for us to distribute and broadcast the information as well.
So when I think about product managers, I know that they're all sort of super keen to make sure they're working really well with everybody because they want to get the most out of their team. What advice would you give to a product manager who's working with a data analyst or a UX researcher? And maybe the advice is different for the different kind of function or role, to really get the most out of that person when they're working with them.
Yeah, this is something I've been discussing a lot within our groups. In fact, for particular reasons in our team right now, we are going kind of resetting on a RACI, who's responsible and accountable or consulted or informed for different parts of the project. And partly because we've been looking at the SMEs who are allocated to the teams and what the expectations are, so they can kind of know what to do in those sister parts of the organization and who best to bring in. And what I would say is, when someone new is coming in, or if we're looking for an expert or someone to come help us out with something, have a conversation much like this right here, to learn a little bit more about what it is that they do, what are they expected to bring in, how they can work together, who's going to do what, kind of just the general etiquette of what kind of meetings are we going to have, and kind of play it out from there. I think we generally let our teams, be quite empowered on what are their ways of working. I think the most influence that we generally want to have is that they've got the right resources so that they can, go and do the work that they want to do. And, that they're having that exploration on what works for us as a team, because they won't also, oftentimes not be in the same time zone. They could be in different locations, usually working very hybrid, I think, like a lot of groups these days.
So I find that when I'm doing, so I do a lot of data analysis and user research myself, just because I like to kind of keep in touch with, the detail. And I feel a need to be close to it and understand it as well. I think you understand and appreciate the work a lot more if you've had some experience of it. So how much do you get your product managers to be close to the detail? Obviously, you just said that you like to do it yourself. So
I can hear them in my head right now, like answering this question on my behalf. I do a lot of coaching on this. I don't expect them to be the data analysts. We're quite fortunate to work with data analysts and user researchers to help us bring in that picture. But I do feel like it's important for every product manager to know where the data is, how to interpret that data, particularly if we're pivoting into a new problem space, kind of validating that problem is real and worthy of our time. One of the things earlier this year that I'm reflecting on this discussion in my head with my team about, mapping out the user flow, putting the data on top of the user flow. How well are all of these events converting? Where are the opportunities laying out there? How big are those opportunities, so that we can understand how we might want to prioritize one over another? I think they're generally very much on board with this, and in my head, I'm seeing them. Yes, we know. We will do it. And it's we're coming up now, preparing our Q3 OKRs. So I do see the team diving into all of the data, into those user journeys, pointing back to the graphs and the user flows. Like, this is the problem that we're going to tackle right now. So it's cool.
This episode is brought to you by Pendo, the only all-in-one product experience platform.
Do you find yourself bouncing around multiple tools to uncover what's happening inside your product?
In one simple platform, Pendo makes it easy to both answer critical questions about how users engage with your product and take action.
First, Pendo is built around product analytics, enabling you to deeply understand user behavior so you can make strategic optimizations.
Next, Pendo lets you deploy in-app guides that lead users through the actions that matter most.
Then Pendo integrates user feedback so you can capture and analyze how people feel and what people want.
And a new thing in Pendo, session replays, a very cool way to experience your users' actual experiences.
There's a good reason over 10,000 companies use it today.
Visit pendo.io/podcast to create your free Pendo account today and try it yourself.
Want to take your product-led know-how a step further? Check out Pendo and Mind the Product's lineup of free certification courses led by product experts and designed to help you grow and advance in your career.
Learn more today at pendo.io/podcast.
And you said you do a lot of coaching on this. Is there, obviously there's the kind of the right mental model for thinking about things and asking questions in the right way, but are there certain hard skills that, you need a product manager to learn? Even things like how to use different queries in Excel or something like that.
I probably would not do that. So that would probably be beyond my skill level. But there are the analysts that we do work with could certainly do that. And fortunately, they do that. Probably the one thing that I'm doing with my team, and this is probably a reflection of my UX background, is mapping out that journey, all of the minutia of the events, where things, the happy path and the various unhappy paths, and working through that and having the conversations about what's going on here, and is this important for us right now, or not? And usually it's letting them have that conversation back with me rather than me asking the questions. Just like, okay, tell me what we're looking at here and what's going on and where are we trying to get to in the end.
And is there anything else that really helps get a product manager into the right mindset of, really digging into the data?
Yeah, I think it's also following your performance and reviewing that. I try not to be too neurotic about it, but we do have conversations weekly, at least, where we're talking about the performance, if it's going in the right track, if we want to try something else. So we do tend to have, through those regular data touch points, that sort of mindset. to know if we are going the way that we want to go or if we need to pivot. We've done a lot of pivoting this year, which is fine. That means we're learning, we're paying attention to things and making the right calls.
Interesting. So what causes a pivot? Is that
new
information, I'm guessing?
Precisely. And a pivot's probably, too big of a word. It's probably just an adjustment most of the time.
Yeah.
New information, like we tried this and that did not work. Or we've realized, some event in the environment has changed and we need to go faster. So we need more traffic. It's really being nimble and being on our toes, which is both a lot of fun and sometimes stressful, depending on where you are. But we do. I think my team does a really fantastic job at following the signals that are around them and adjusting to that. So if you watch this, high five.
I love it. I think it is one of the things that's really important not just in a product manager, but in a whole product team, that understanding of when there's new data and new information, you have to respond to that.
Yeah.
As much as it's comfortable to stick with the plan that you created and all the love that you put into the plan and everything, but you have to let go and go where this new information is taking you.
Yeah, and that's stakeholder conversation. A lot of team conversation, like, okay, what do we think this is?
Yeah.
Who are we going to talk to about it? When are we going to go?
So you mentioned as well, obviously you've got a UX background and that you love mapping out different scenarios. So let's dig into that a little bit. What's the kind of first rule of thumb, or if you like, of creating a map? Like when and how do you use that as a way to tackle a problem?
This is probably very unique to Heather and not going to work for many other people, or they may have better methods. I don't get perfect in the beginning. I really start with a data point and work out from there. Usually I'm starting with where are we trying to get to and working backwards. Yeah, now that I'm thinking about this more, where am I trying to get to? What's the usual starting point? And then you find the usual starting point is not always the same. There's usually multiple ways through. So I kind of work through that one branch at a time. And once I've got a general flow, then I'll go back and look at the data. I'll see what data I have, if I have data at all. Sometimes I don't. Recently, this led to an interesting project with our team where we were looking at our user funnel and the branches of the user funnel and where we had data and not. And we started from that. There was also a usability test that had come later to let's look into this and see what's going on in here. And we were able to see that this was a much more complicated part of the funnel than we'd originally known before. It started going into the data that sat on top of that and finding we didn't have tooling for it. There were some gaps in our view of data. So we're looking at how to go and pull that in and put it into place. We're still working on that right now, in fact. And it's been a really good process and a learning experience for us.
And do you tend to, when you're mapping something out end to end, so I find usually people talk about doing this in a workshop setting, but I find it much easier to do that sort of job on my own initially and then bring other people in to go, this is what I've got to, do you agree, disagree, where is this wrong or right?
I think there's place for both, actually. It probably depends on what you're going to do with that funnel later. If it is the case where I'm using it for my own needs, if I'm going to manage something with this, then certainly I'll do it on my own and usually talk with my team about it as they will well recognize. But I think if it's something where, and I'm having this with one of my groups as well, where we've kind of done a pivot around one of these things, and I'm like, okay, I'm going hands off now. It's really, for me, it's quite important that they pick this up and make this their own, and they learn where the ins and outs of that journey are, and we'll socialize it in that sort of way.
So what's your best advice that you ever received when you started working as a product person? Well, I say as a product person, I mean a UX researcher is a product person.
Yeah.
What's the thing that someone kind of advised you and then it kind of changed your perspective on everything in a positive way?
Really great question. I've actually had so many good mentors. One of them, Jonathan, I'm thinking of right now, who said before a big presentation, just fake that good mood until you make it. I'm like, that was good, doing that one right now. Coming in and talking about data, one of my earlier managers, Gabby, had said to me, we'd had a conversation around data when I think it was at a time where the company was really getting into the product model and learning on where is the data coming from and what are we doing that with our decision making. And that was probably one of the first big influences I had with data analytics, like complementing the qualitative behavioral data that I had up to that point. So that just the context of the conversation, that's resonating right now as well. Piece of advice. I wish I have to come back to you at the end of the day. I go, oh, Lily, I have it now because there's been so much. But I would say if I was going to pass it on to others, know where your good enough is. There is no perfection. Everything we do in product is constantly changing. And sometimes you need to know when good enough is and move forward from there. And I'm sure I've heard that echoed in my ear or whispered numerous times in various forms. And that's a good truth to live with.
Nice. I love it. And it would be remiss of us not to mention the evolving world of AI and how AI is impacting product functions in general, as particularly, I guess, on the data side of things. What do you see changing with how product managers and product teams work with data and how AI and like new tools are going to support us?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a question that we're also discussing where we work as well. So I think it depends, again, on who you are and what role you are looking at. Certainly, it's helping us go through vast amounts of data much faster. So I'm told I'm looking forward to that benefit a little bit more. There's so many different facets to what we're looking at with, particularly with Gen AI and different forms of LLM. We're trying to apply it to the right problem and in the right way instead of having, what are those metaphors like, hitting using a big mallet for a nail or something like this. But we're using it judiciously. So we're choosing where to use it, what the problem is, and if this is the right technology to solve that problem with. So as far as our experimentation goes, that's one perspective. I know that we've got some developers who are experimenting with fast tracking some code so that they can see what kind of prototypes they can create. And, they're doing code reviews. Probably similar things happening in design. I wouldn't be too surprised. I work quite closely to the research community, and they're producing large sets of data usually. And what we hear is that it's quite helpful in doing a lot of data analysis rather quickly. Where we work at Elsevier, we're quite interested in the integrity of the content that we publish on the behalf of the research community. And in our own work, we're quite sensitive to, the hallucinations that might come in to different models. So when I say we're quite judicious and thoughtful about where we apply the technology, this is one of the things that we have in our mind is this the right tool for the problem right now?
It's interesting you say that. I wrote a LinkedIn post the other day, and I know so many people who use, I mean, I think it even says on LinkedIn now, like...
Generated with...
generated with AI. So at the end of the post, I put in brackets, not created with AI. And I always feel like that's going to be the thing in the future of like,
it might
by
be.
the way, I did not use AI.
It might be.
This is all powered by my brain.
There'll be a place for that.
Maybe not by my brain, but other people's brains.
Yeah.
Well, Heather, it's been so nice talking to you. Thank you so much for taking time out to come and chat to me today.
Thanks for letting me talk with you today. It was a pleasure being here.
The Product Experience hosts are me, Lily Smith, host by night and Chief Product Officer by day.
And me, Randy Silver, also host by night. And I spend my days working with product and leadership teams, helping their teams to do amazing work.
Luran Pratt is our producer, and Luke Smith is our editor.
And our theme music is from product community legend Arnie Kittler's band, POW. Thanks to them for letting us use their track.